This is the story of how the world's fastest growing fitness brand lost nearly everything in a single weekend, only to face an even darker tragedy 4 years later. At its height, CrossFit was an unstoppable force, with 15,000 locations, more than Burger King or Dunkin' Donuts. It generated $4 billion in ecosystem revenue and commanded a fanatical loyalty that rivals religious movements. But behind the glitz of the ESPN televised games and the community spirit, a toxic culture was festering. Then came a tweet, a leaked Zoom call, and a drowning that the world watched live. The empire imploded. Greg Glassman never fit the mold of a corporate CEO. A former gymnast with a limp and a distinct lack of filter, he started training clients in his Santa Cruz garage in the late 90s. His method was simple but brutal, involving constantly varied functional movements performed at high intensity. Glassman didn't care about bicep curls or mirrors because he cared about work capacity. In 2000, he officially founded CrossFit Inc. and posted workouts online for free. It was raw, anti-establishment, and effective. Police academies and military units adopted it immediately because it promised real-world fitness instead of gym muscles. That garage mentality became the brand's DNA, staying gritty, stripped down, and unapologetically intense. The secret to CrossFit's explosion was the people rather than the burpees. Glassman understood that shared suffering creates bonds, something traditional gyms missed. When you finish a workout so hard it leaves you gasping on the floor, you feel connected to the person gasping next to you. This communal suffering turned gyms into boxes and members into tribes. They spoke a new language of WODs, AMRAPs, and PRs instead of just exercising. By 2005, there were 13 affiliates, and by 2010, there were 1,700. The barrier to entry was low, requiring only a fee and a weekend seminar to own a gym. It was the democratization of fitness business, and it spread rapidly. The cameras arrived next. In 2011, CrossFit signed a 10-year deal with Reebok, turning a fringe fitness method into a professional sport. The CrossFit Games moved from a dusty ranch to major arenas where they were broadcast on ESPN to millions. Heroes emerged, like Rich Froning, who won 4 consecutive titles, and Matt Frazier, who would later win 5. These competitors seemed like superhumans, who could lift 300 pounds after running a marathon. Sponsorship money poured in, and Nike entered the space. The sport of fitness gave the average gym-goer a competitive outlet and a dream. Members were training for the open, rather than just working out, measuring themselves against the fittest people on Earth. By 2018, the numbers were staggering because CrossFit had over 15,000 affiliates in 162 countries. That figure represents more locations than Starbucks had in the United States at the time. The company valuation hit estimates of $4 billion, though Glassman kept it private. The affiliate model was a cash cow because gyms paid $3,000 a year for the name, while HQ took zero risk on their leases or equipment. If a gym failed, CrossFit lost nothing, but if it succeeded, the brand grew stronger. Glassman became known for his libertarian philosophy, fighting legal battles against soda companies and health regulators with the same aggression he applied to workouts. He operated like a warlord rather than just a fitness leader. Success masked deep problems. The brand's mascot was Uncle Rhabdo, a clown hooked up to a dialysis machine as a dark joke about rhabdomyolysis, a potentially lethal kidney condition caused by overexertion. Critics screamed that the programming was dangerous, citing high injury rates among inexperienced members. Glassman's response was typically brash, stating that it could kill you, and he had always been honest about that. Internally, the culture at HQ in Santa Cruz was described by former employees as a boys' club, rife with misogyny and fear. Glassman surrounded himself with agreeable staff and fired dissenters. While the community was strong, the leadership became increasingly isolated and erratic. They believed their own hype, and that arrogance left them vulnerable. The tipping point came from a smartphone, rather than a lawsuit or an injury. On June 6, 2020, during global protests following the murder of George Floyd, the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation tweeted that racism was a public health issue. Greg Glassman replied by calling it Floyd-19. The backlash was instant and severe. He tried to defend it as a critique of lockdown models, but the insensitivity was impossible to ignore. Within hours, the internet turned against the CrossFit brand. The public reaction on Twitter was only part of the issue, as Glassman had been on a private Zoom call just hours earlier that would seal his fate. The Zoom call escalated the situation significantly. BuzzFeed News obtained audio from a private meeting Glassman held with gym owners earlier that same day. In the recording, he ranted about conspiracies, claiming he didn't mourn George Floyd and questioning the reality of the murder. He sounded erratic, telling affiliates that neither he nor his staff were mourning for George Floyd. The audio proved the tweet was a reflection of the CEO's worldview, rather than a mistake. This was a betrayal for thousands of gym owners who had built their livelihoods on inclusivity and community. They couldn't justify paying $3,000 a year to a man who spoke that way. The response was swift and brutal, as Reebok, the brand's biggest sponsor, ended their partnership immediately. Rogue Fitness, the equipment giant, removed the CrossFit logo from their site. The affiliates delivered the most significant impact when over 500 gyms de-affiliated in a matter of days. They stripped the name from their walls, repainted their signs, and became community fitness gyms. Top athletes like Rich Froning and Tia Claire Toomey publicly condemned Glassman. The entire business model began to crumble. Glassman, who had ruled for 20 years, was forced to resign within 72 hours, after turning a global empire into a pariah in less than a week. In July 2020, Eric Rosa, a tech entrepreneur and CrossFit gym owner, bought the company with backing from Berkshire Partners. The price was never officially disclosed, but Glassman reportedly walked away with $200 million. Rosa was polished, corporate, and politically correct, contrasting sharply with Glassman. He went on an apology tour, holding town halls and promising to rebuild trust. He established a diversity council and vowed to professionalize the chaotic headquarters. The strategy worked briefly, and the exodus of gyms paused. Affiliates who had left began to return, hopeful that the leadership had matured. However, fixing a broken culture takes more than just a new CEO. This period of optimism ended quickly. By 2022, Rosa stepped down from the CEO role to become chairman and was replaced by Don Fall, a former Marine and tech executive. The corporate shift became obvious. In late 2023, CrossFit announced a massive hike in affiliate fees, jumping from $3,000 to $4,500 for many gyms. They also mandated that owners get higher-level certifications, which cost even more money. The community, already struggling from the pandemic and the Glassman scandal, felt financially pressured. Gym owners argued they were paying more for less because marketing support was weak and the brand prestige had faded. The community first mantra started to sound more like shareholders first. While 2020 damaged the brand's reputation, 2024 brought a much deeper crisis. The CrossFit Games had moved to Fort Worth, Texas. During the very first event, a run-swim workout in Marine Creek Lake, Serbian athlete Lazar Dukich began to struggle in the water just meters from the finish line. Viewers on the live broadcast saw the 28-year-old veteran competitor bobbing before disappearing. Safety personnel on paddleboards were nearby, but didn't intervene. Spectators screamed from the shore, but the event continued. Lazar Dukich drowned while thousands watched and athletes swam past him. It was a catastrophic failure of safety protocols that exposed negligence at the highest level of the sport. The aftermath was a public relations disaster. The Games continued the next day after a brief tribute, a decision that divided the community. Many athletes felt pressured to compete, while others withdrew in disgust. The most intense anger was directed at headquarters. CEO Don Fall and Games director Dave Castro faced immediate calls to resign. In the months that followed, the organization went silent. No detailed investigation results were immediately shared, and no significant leadership changes were announced. The Professional Fitness Athletes Association formed to demand independent safety officers, accusing CrossFit of prioritizing the spectacle over human life. The trust that Rosa had tried to rebuild was destroyed. By early 2025, the fallout had reached the affiliates. In Brazil, the Superforce affiliate network, which had registered over 600 athletes for the Open in 2024, registered just 20 in 2025. This drop represented a boycott rather than laziness. Gyms began asking why they needed CrossFit. They realized they could teach functional fitness, build community, and run high-intensity classes without paying $4,500 to a corporation that let an athlete die and raise their rent. The number of paying affiliates dropped to around 10,000. The brand that once defined fitness was becoming a liability to the gyms that built it. The final sign of the empire's decline came from the boardroom. In early 2025, reports surfaced that Berkshire Partners was looking to sell. They had bought a distressed asset in 2020, hoping for a turnaround, but 5 years later, they were holding a brand damaged by scandal and tragedy. The 2025 games were moved to Albany, New York, a smaller venue in a smaller market that indicated a reducing presence. The goal of reaching 100 million practitioners, which Rosa had boldly claimed in 2021, was abandoned. The company is currently searching for a buyer, but few are interested because the brand is currently being sued by the family of a deceased athlete. CrossFit, the company, is struggling to survive, but CrossFit, the methodology, has already won. You can walk into any standard gym today and see bumper plates, kettlebells, and pull-up rigs. High-intensity functional training is now the global standard. The irony is that the brand succeeded so well in changing fitness culture that it made itself obsolete. People do not need the trademark to do the workout anymore. The community remains, but it has outgrown the corporate structure. Whether the corporation survives the lawsuits and the debt is almost irrelevant. The movement started in a garage, changed the fitness industry, even if it destroyed the business empire in the process. The rise and fall of CrossFit is a brutal lesson in leadership. It proved that a strong community can build an empire, but arrogance and negligence can dismantle it overnight. From 15,000 gyms to a brand in crisis, the journey took just 25 years. The workouts remain difficult and authentic, but the name on the wall matters less than ever. The movement survived its leaders, proving that the dedication of the members is stronger than any CEO.